John Blackburn was a British antiquarian, book dealer and novelist, writer of espionage thrillers and horror novels. Born in Northumberland, the brother of poet Thomas Blackburn, he served as a radio officer during World War II. His novels, which often reused characters or focused on the world of international politics and espionage, made him once well regarded, but he has since slipped into somewhat of an oblivion since his death. In recent years, Valancourt Books has begun reissuing many of his books, many of them mostly unavailable for a period of many years. Let us somewhat frustrate common sense, however, and start in reverse order with Blackburn's latter novel, Bury Him Darkly, published in 1968, just for the reason of better contrast. The story begins as a murder mystery and includes a private appreciation society trying to find a way to claim access to the tomb of Martin Railstone, an 18th-century eccentric poet whom, to quote, the Church of England has rather a different view on than society, considering him to be nothing less than a British Desaid, and he's also considered potentially a godfather in spiritual sense of Aleister Crowley. Railstone's admirers have tried to gain access to the tomb for years, but the obstinate church into whose administration the estate fell upon Railstone's death is intending to wait out the clock until the whole valley and house, since fallen into the state of a decrepit tourist attraction, gets flooded by the building of a new dam. The only way to gain access to the tomb now is to provide an heir according to Railstone's will, an heir of such specific nature they cannot possibly exist. Of course they do, but this is only the beginning. The story becomes a quest for the Holy Grail, and then turns into a catastrophic novel where the story starts out with a single death, and then the death count rises exponentially, and the salvation of the human race becomes predicated on the moral absolution of a former Nazi official. 10 years prior, Blackburn's Broken Boy came out, and I would rather say was not as much of a success, at least narrative-wise, as was Bury Him Darkly. It may be unfair to compare it to work Blackburn wrote 10 years later, yet I am still very much forced to compare it to Bury Him Darkly, and find it lacking. Where the latter is steeped in Gothic atmosphere, while a great and bewildering mystery, very much shown to be sinister and quite unnatural, builds up to a truly fantastic and destructive climax, Broken Boy takes halfway through the book to even start dropping the red herring, bog-standard murder detection idea, and even then most of the rest of the book is just characters going back and forth, looking up house plans and expert opinions at museums, only to culminate a murder conspiracy/satanic cult. Sadly, the cult is bereft of any real grandeur, and all the potential nastiness of this sort of idea is mostly swept away, since all this cult ever does is drive a woman insane to be their pawn, and then worry about timetables and setups to kill people and make false alibis. Nothing supernatural of any sort ever happens in it, and the cult itself is a bit mundane beyond the first previously mentioned point. The story itself deals with a murder, where the person first is suspected turns out to be innocent, and then he turns out to not be innocent, and it all turns out to be a part of a big ploy by this cult, an offshoot or a survivor of some ancient cult where derived from Madagascar, or rather derived from the church at Madagascar and then imported back to Europe, and this cult provides a sort of space for dejected women to come together and plan horrible and murderous revenge against people who try or who succeeded in taking away their sons from them. The most interesting part of the book is the very brief attention given to the real-life story of Queen Ranavalona of Madagascar, and I honestly would have preferred the novel to be about that, instead of watching a general from the Foreign Office who seems to think Bantu people are, quote, all bow-legged because they, quote, haven't been walking on their legs very long, and yeah, he seems to be really fucking racist, ride on trains and spend a good third of the book going on about the red herring that is the damn Ruskies supposedly having orchestrated this murder that turns out to not have anything to do with international politics. I've been waiting to read Blackburn's Our Lady of Pain for quite some time now. However, I am slightly more wary of this prospect now after reading Broken Boy, which is especially a shame given the weird and bizarre covers of the various illustrations of editions of Broken Boy throughout the years. I do hope, ladies, less thriller and more wacky, fantastic sci-fi horror hijinks like Bury Him Darkly, and if I ever get a chance to read it, I will report on it accordingly.